Hey everyone, and welcome. The film we're going to be talking about today is The New Mutants. Fun fact, this is the last film in the X-Men franchise that was distributed by Fox Studios. The film came out in 2020 and stars Blu Hunt, Maisie Williams, and Anya Taylor-joy, and was directed by Josh Boone. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. The film tells the story of 5 mutants who are in this secret facility and must fight to free themselves. There's Rain, who can turn into a wolf, Ileana, who has some type of sorcery power, Sam, who can propel himself and is invulnerable while doing so, and Bobby, who can manipulate solar energy. The story mainly revolves around Danny Moonstar, and the viewer is trying to figure out what her powers are. In the facility, they are monitored by Dr. Reyes, who has the ability to create force fields. She has led them to believe that she is trying to help them, but in reality, she is training them to be killers for this mysterious corporation called Essex Corp. This film has some up and coming actors and actresses that you may have seen before. Blu Hunt was in the originals. Maisie Williams was in this super popular show that you may have heard of called Game of Thrones. Charlie Heaton plays in another little show you may have heard of called Stranger Things. Henry Zaga you may have seen in 13 Reasons Why. Anya Taylor-joy you may remember from Split or The Queen's Gambit. Alice Braga was in I Am Legend and The Predators. The film was directed by Josh Boone, who also directed The Fault in Our Stars. The film starts off with a bang and really pulls you in. I love how the film starts off with this crazy event and you're just trying to figure out what's going on. I think this is something I noticed with a lot of the X-Men films is that they start off with this big event before they really get into like the meat of the movie. I think this is a cool tactic for them to do to ensure that the viewer is immediately pulled in and you have all of their attention. I think throughout the film there was a lot of dialogue that I just personally felt was not needed throughout the film. There was a lot of talk about how they feel about being in this place that they were being held in, but I also wanted to know more about their powers and their backstory and how they ended up in this facility in the first place. It would have been nice to see how they ended up there and give a little bit more insight on what was actually being done in this facility. I also thought it could have been more interesting to maybe say, if there had been more people that had been in this facility before, or if this was something new that was happening. I just wanted to know a little bit more about what was actually going on with this facility and Dr. Reyes. I thought it was cool that they tried to make this movie more of like a horror film. I think that's something that really intrigued me when I heard about this film coming out because we haven't really seen a superhero movie that was more in like the horror genre. We've seen more like comedy, action, but horror was something new, and I was really excited to see that, type of feel in a superhero movie. The movie didn't really scare me, but it's probably because I watched like a whole bunch of scary movies. I think that Anya Taylor-joy does a good job as Ileana and really stands out. She's a bitch throughout most of the film, and I think that the film does explore her backstory a little bit and how some of that pain that she's gone through in her past has led up to who she is today. She is also one of the mutants who uses her power very frequently, which is something I was wondering about. Kind of like, why is she the only one in there that uses her powers so openly, but also so frequently compared to all of the other mutants who don't? Essex Corporation comes up a couple of times throughout the film, and I got the feeling that they were hinting that this is something that they would talk about in future movies. People who are familiar with the comics knows that Essex Corporation is named after Nathaniel Essex. Nathaniel Essex is a scientist who experiments on people and eventually gives himself superpowers. He becomes the villain, also known as Mr. Sinister, and the X-Men are constantly fighting to stop him. It would be cool to see more about Mr. Sinister in future films, but I highly doubt that that's going to happen because Fox no longer owns the X-Men series and the series has moved into ownership of Disney, who owns Marvel. And I definitely think that they're probably not going to continue on with the New Mutant films. But it was an interesting story that could have been fleshed out in other movies, and I would have loved to see that. But unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to see that. I thought it was cool how Danny Moonstar, who is the main character in the film, is an indigenous mutant, but she's also played by an actress who is indigenous as well, Blu Hunt. I thought it was cool to see this representation on screen. Speaking of representation, this film introduces us to a same-sex mutant couple, which is something that we haven't seen in any superhero movies that I can think of. So I thought it was cool to finally bring that into a superhero movie because representation matters. One of my favorite scenes in this film is at the end when they're fighting the demon bear. This was the first time that we really got to see everyone's powers in action, and it was interesting for me to see how each person utilized their powers when they were going against the giant demon bear. I think that overall the movie was just okay. I think that the movie spent too much time trying to get the viewer to figure out what Danny's powers were, when I felt like it wasn't that hard to figure out what they were from, the hints that they were giving you. I thought it would have been cooler to explore more of the mutants in the facility or even Dr. Reyes and understand their backstory and their reasoning behind how they ended up at the facility in the first place. This film got pushed back lots of times, and most recently it was pushed back again because of the coronavirus. But prior to that, it had been pushed back not to compete with other Fox films like The Dark Phoenix. And when Disney acquired Fox, it got pushed back again. And I definitely think that this is probably not the best way that the X-Men franchise should have went out. I think that the franchise itself is kind of what led me into being into superhero movies, and it's kind of fizzled down with the later movies. It would be interesting to see if Disney includes the New Mutants in the fold, but I highly doubt that we'll be seeing them again. Thank you for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe so you can keep up to date with more of my videos. But besides that, everyone stay safe, have fun, and goodbye.